Keon Rose.
You are listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. I got it. It's here. The moment that I've been waiting for what feels like years, but was really only like 6 days. My intro, my own proper intro. So, I'd like to thank the powers that be for that. But I don't want to dwell on the past. I like to look forward to the future. And in the future, in the very near future, is the month of March. And the best sporting event in sports is in March. That would be March Madness. Now, you could count the NCAA tournament as March Madness. But for me, March Madness is the whole month, right? Like all of the conference tournaments. I am comatose at that point because I watch all of them, right? But I've been focusing a lot on the SEC basketball tournament, in large part because SEC basketball, for possibly the first time in several years, from top to bottom, the entire league has been entertaining to watch. It's actually been very, very fun and thrilling to check out Auburn and check out Tennessee and Kentucky on a nightly basis. And so we're starting to get to that point in the year where we're looking at bubble watch. Who's on the bubble for the tournament? Who can get in? Who's not going to get in, right? Whose record, whose resume is good enough to get them in? And I'd like to say that most of the SEC is actually good enough to get into the tournament and probably be seeded pretty well, right? Like there are some teams we know are getting in. Auburn's getting in because Auburn, I believe they were voted most likely to finish 9th in the SEC, surprised absolutely everyone. They have the best record in the league, 24-5, 12-4 in conference. They've played a decently soft schedule at points, but they have the toughest schedule in the league, right? Like the RPI is their 7th. They've got the toughest in the league. So this is why Auburn is ranked very highly, and I expect Auburn to actually make a run once the NCAA tournament begins. Obviously, Tennessee is also a lock for the tournament. At 21-7 and an 11-5 conference record, they've done and shown that they're more than good enough to get in, and even having a big-time statement victory last night, right? In Kentucky is always in. And we're used to this lately, where Kentucky, their teams, John Calipari has been recruiting younger and younger and younger players. And it is one of the most weird things to me because this is a team that's been struggling out of the gate for the last 2 to 3 years because they are so young. They essentially have to learn to play together as a basketball team, focus on the fundamentals, not get too far away from their pace, and prove that they are as athletically dominant as they really are, all in one season. They have to do this, and they've gotten their act together halfway through the season, which they always seem to do. 20-9 record, 9-7 in conference, which means at worst they'll finish 9-9. Probably not, though. I think they're going to finish. They're going to finish pretty well because I think that they're going to do pretty decently in the SEC tournament. And then there are a number of teams that they're not a lock to be in the tournament, but let's face it and be honest, they're probably there. Arkansas, probably there. 20-9 record, 9-7. Same as Kentucky, but they have a weaker schedule, right? And, the other night they did have a 15-point beatdown at the hands of Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky put the hurting on them. So I look at it and I go, okay, well, this team is a good enough basketball team to get in. Florida can get in. Texas A&M can get in. Alabama's played very good basketball, and so has Missouri. Those are all tournament teams. Now, there are some teams that have some work to do, right? On one hand, you've got Mississippi State. When you look at their record, you wonder what's so odd about them. Why is it that Mississippi State has some work to do? They're 21-8, and again, 9-7 in conference. Well, the reason why this is happening to Mississippi State is that strength of schedule. It's really, really low. Right? They don't have a very good RPI. It's one of the worst in the league. right? And Georgia's one of those teams that's got a lot of work to do as well. And I think that it's actually very fair for Georgia because Georgia came on really, really late, right? They have a first-year head coach, and they came on really, really late. Yante Matten is putting Georgia on his back. He seems to be the head honcho of that particular basketball team. And I would like to see Georgia in the NCAA tournament. I think it would be absolutely fun. I like Yante Matten. I think that he's a very talented young player. I would like to see a lot of these teams in the tournament because I think that they have been playing very inspired and very solid basketball as of late. And I expect the SEC to show out in the NCAA tournament. Again, this is the best that they've been in years. In years, they're one of the deepest teams, which is crazy because when you look at it, one of the deepest leagues, the Big Ten has always been deep, and they've taken a step back, in my opinion. The Big East is deep, and I wouldn't say they've taken a step back, but the Big East isn't as big a conference as the SEC, and so you wonder, like, what's the level of competition that all of these schools are playing? And the SEC, or the ACC rather, is always a very deep league as well. I mean, the locks that the ACC can put forth: Virginia, Duke, North Carolina, Clemson, Virginia Tech. These are all powerhouse schools. All powerhouse schools. But I don't know if we've ever had a possible level of representation this high from the SEC, right? And for as good as the Big 12 has been, the Big 12 is very top heavy. If you're not Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, TCU, Oklahoma, and Kansas State, I really don't know what you can get in, right? Like, Texas has been pretty decent, but decent isn't good enough. Losing record in the league. Baylor has been pretty decent, but decent isn't good enough, right? Like, we've just never seen a situation where we've had this many SEC teams, or at least we haven't seen it in 4 or 5 years. So I'm excited about it. I am thrilled about it, as I am also thrilled about the SoCon tournament and the Mocs. Right, they're going to be playing North Carolina Gulf Coast to start the SoCon tournament, the Lady Mocs, that is. And that to me is also going to be a fun tournament to keep an eye on, in large part because the Mocs are the 3rd seed, and they've never been in this position before. And if you watch sports, what do you watch it for? You watch it to see something new. You watch it to see something unscripted. And so you're looking at a Mocs team that they're in a new position for them, right? Like where maybe you don't focus on the Mocs women's team as much in the SoCon tournament because it almost feels writ that they're going to win it. Like they generally do not struggle in that tournament. Even when they've struggled, their struggles are, we come from behind to win the whole tournament, right? It's never been, we're not sure that we're going to win the whole tournament. And even now, with the injuries that they've suffered, with the rotation being small, with the depth that they need to rely a lot on a lot of freshmen, even with all of those things, I still don't get that feeling in the pit of my stomach that somehow the Lady Mocs are not going to win the SoCon tournament. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose here on all new Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. I have a thought about Tim Tebow because I generally do have thoughts about Tim Tebow, in large part because Tim Tebow to me is an interesting player. He's the guy that people like to dislike, in large part because he comes off as wildly inconsistent sometimes, where, you know, you have a dream of being a football player and you have a dream of being an NFL quarterback, but you're not a great thrower of the football. You could play other positions. Like, Tim Tebow is athletic enough that people would give him a chance to play other positions, but Tim Tebow decided instead to go play baseball, a sport he had not played in 11 years, and high school was the last time that he played it. I don't understand the logic of that there, but to each his own, right? But Tim Tebow's actually been made fun of lately on the internet because Tim Tebow is playing for the Mets minor league team, and he injured himself on a sprinkler. Right? Like, there was a sprinkler on the field. Tim Tebow stepped on the sprinkler and injured his leg. He's listed as day-to-day. And the thing that I find the most interesting about people making fun of Tim Tebow on this is that you are clearly looking for an opportunity to make fun of Tim Tebow. I make fun of Tim Tebow when he presents the opportunities. I don't really look for them. So you're looking for an opportunity to make a mockery of Mr. Tim Tebow, who injured himself by stepping on a sprinkler, which to me is not funny, right? And it's not funny because I don't laugh at injuries. I laugh at injuries all the time. If the injury is hilarious, it's hilarious. Where this generally tends to not be funny is, do you not know baseball? You understand that baseball is the sport where injuries of the ridiculous happen all the time. Only to baseball players, it would seem, that the most ridiculous injuries actually occur. Allow me to go down the list of players. And by the way, this is a short list. I did one Google search and went to the first website that I saw. Mentalfloss.com had a list of 24 guys. But trust me, there's dozens and dozens of lists of the most ridiculous injuries in baseball. And it's very common, right? This is not just obscure players that get injured in awful ways, right? When you look at okay, so in 2011, Jason Kipnis, the Cleveland Indians, Jason Kipnis injured his hamstring. What was Jason Kipnis doing? Jason Kipnis, in order to injure his hamstring, was actually stretching his hamstring to prevent injury of his hamstring. Right. Jason Kipnis injured. Ryan Dempster went on the DL a few years back with a fractured right big toe he suffered while trying to jump the dugout railing to celebrate a Cubs victory. I'm just telling you that odd baseball injuries are the norm, not the exception. Ken Griffey Jr. missed a game when his protective cup slipped and pinched his testicle. Jamie Easterly in the 80s stepped on a gopher hole while running around and training, and he hurt his back. Marty Cordova missed time in 2002 because he scorched his face in a tanning bed and had to avoid direct sunlight. Wade Boggs once strained his back pulling on his cowboy boots. Randy Johnson, not the pitcher, but the infielder for the Braves, once spent 6 weeks on the DL after dislocating his thumb. What was he doing? He was putting on his socks. My man dislocated his thumb putting on his socks. And Nolan Ryan, probably one of the toughest dudes in baseball history, was once bitten by a coyote, which is actually kind of cool as far as these ridiculous injuries tend to go, but also who gets bitten by a coyote? What were you doing that you were anywhere near coyotes? I understand Nolan Ryan, he's in Texas. He could have been anywhere. But seriously, I would never be in a position where I could be bitten by a coyote. Ridiculous baseball injuries are the norm, not the exception. You're going to make fun of Tim Tebow, make fun of him for the litany of other reasons that Tim Tebow provides us to make fun of him over. The fact, like his swing, which, when it connects is effective, but it doesn't look like a real baseball player's swing. I mean, you could easily make fun of that. That could be several shows worth of hilarity. But no, people decided to go, oh, he tripped on a sprinkler. As though that's the most ridiculous of all baseball injuries that have ever happened. Might I point out that a man dislocated his thumb while putting on his socks? Right? And I think that the answer to this is probably obvious. Like, why is it that baseball players find themselves in these situations more so than absolutely everybody else? And that is because the baseball players play a grueling long sport. So your body has taken a lot of punishment. It doesn't take anything else really to just put you over the top, right? Like where most of us don't dislocate our thumbs putting on our socks, most of us don't do anything that puts any strain on our thumbs generally. Unless you play tons of video games. I guess. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. I want to shift gears here and jump to the NBA because I think that something interesting has happened. I was talking to Sam Jordan before his show ended about Isaiah Thomas, right? Isaiah Thomas was not working in Cleveland with the Cavaliers. He was injured for much of the season, but even when he did play, they looked bad with him. And he seems to have revived himself again with the Lakers, right? And I think that Jordan Clarkson, by the way, playing with Cleveland, that's going to help his career too, because Jordan Clarkson doesn't understand how to be a point guard. He's a very young player. I think he's a shoot-first guy, and if his shot's not falling, he's more or less a worthless player on your team, and he's not particularly like the most engaged guy on defense either. I think playing with LeBron will make you more engaged, and you will be passing the ball a lot. You're not a shoot-first point guard if you play with LeBron James. That's why Kyrie Irving no longer plays with LeBron James. That's just a fact. Isaiah Thomas, who I actually would have believed is a shoot-first point guard, has actually done a lot in the way of getting Lakers players the chances that they need to make big-time plays. I look at the guy and I go, he can still play. He can still be very useful for somebody, and he can make his own shot, which I think is invaluable in the NBA. And so, yes, I get on Isaiah Thomas very, very often for not being a very good defender, but Isaiah Thomas is like my height. How do you guard Russell Westbrook? And I'm 5'10", by the way. Isaiah Thomas is actually shorter than me. He's 5'9". How do you guard Russell Westbrook and John Wall and Steph Curry, who we think of as being small, but is actually 6'3"? How do you guard these people on a nightly basis? Or 6'1" or 2, rather. How do you guard these people on a nightly basis? They're all bigger than you, and they've all got incredible handles, and they're all light on their feet, and they can all fly through the air. How do you, well, maybe not Steph, but how do you guard these people if you're Isaiah Thomas? I don't think you can. I think that you play the best offensive game that you play and hope that that offsets anything that is happening. Right now, here's the thing that I think is fascinating. I look at the Atlanta Hawks, a team that 4 years ago, not even 4 years ago, won 60 games in the Eastern Conference. They were number one in the East. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? And they lost to LeBron like everybody lost to LeBron. But the Hawks were good not that long ago. And every year that I watch this basketball team, they fall apart. They get worse and worse and worse. And I think that one good thing that the Atlanta Hawks might actually be able to do for themselves, because Isaiah Thomas is a free agent this summer, is go after Isaiah Thomas. You need scoring. Atlanta ain't got none. None. I don't see anybody on that squad that scares me. Like, I like Schroeder a lot, but his shot is something that's still developing. It's something that's still growing. He's not a shooter. He's a much better shooter than when he first got into the league. I remember I went to go see the Hawks one playoff run, not the year that they won 60 games, but the year after when they were still making the playoffs. And Dennis Schroeder went to go shoot the ball, and everyone in the stadium, all the Hawks fans in the stadium shouted, "No!" Because we all know he can't shoot. He's a much better shooter now than when he first entered the league, but that's not a great shooter still. There isn't anybody on that team that can both shoot and create their own points, right? And create their own offense and get to the bucket at will. You need a guy like that on your squad, and Isaiah Thomas is available. Now, I don't know how much money Isaiah Thomas wants, but I also know that Isaiah Thomas isn't going to get nearly as much money as he was hoping he was going to get. Right? I remember on Twitter last summer, Isaiah Thomas tweeted something about backing up the Brinks truck. And he's a guy that he's worked very hard to get to the NBA and be successful in the NBA. He was the last pick in the draft in the year that he was drafted, right? Like, actually in the same draft with Kyrie Irving. In the same draft with Kyrie. Kyrie was the first pick in that draft. Isaiah Thomas was the last pick in that draft, which is amazing that both of those guys got traded for one another. But Isaiah Thomas has busted his butt and worked extremely hard to wind up being an NFL player without the shadow of a doubt. And so for him, wanting all of that money would be like the culmination of all of this hard work that he's put in, because a guy that is 5'9" is generally not successful in the NBA ever. But he's good. He's really good. And if you're Atlanta, and Atlanta's got a ton of cap space, which, by the way, this team has been being dismantled for the last 2 or 3 years, because I don't know when the Hawks decided they were in rebuilding mode, but they're in rebuilding mode now, right? You get all this cap space. I'm not saying give it all to Isaiah Thomas, but you're going to need a player that everybody in the league respects and likes and wants to play with and knows is pretty good if you're going to want to get a shot at attracting another one of these other max level players. Because right now, the Lakers have a lot of money to work with. The Clippers have a lot of money to work with. The Warriors have a lot of money to work with. And those are all more desirable teams to play on than the Atlanta Hawks at this particular given moment. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on all new Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. The Hall of Fame is an interesting place in Major League Baseball. It's very particular. And it's very strange to me. I'll tell you about it next.
Three, two, one.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
They got him. 18-year-old David Ballard was charged with aggravated riot, felony reckless endangerment, alteration of a weapon, and unlawful possession of a firearm. He is accused of taking out a gun during a fight inside the mall on Saturday. Police initially responded to a report of shots fired at Hamilton Place, but later discovered that a shot had not been fired at all. The trial for Jonathan Walker is underway, with opening statements yesterday, including witness testimony, and new evidence was shown for the first time to the public. The defense maintains a second vehicle may have been involved, an angle they say the police did not thoroughly investigate. Packages addressed to the food bank board members containing white powder were delivered to the food bank's main office. They immediately evacuated and called police. The white powder was baking soda. Val St. John for Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7 News Now.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Expect fair to partly cloudy skies to continue through your nighttime. Cold overnight, lows mid and upper 20s. Now for your Wednesday, look for some sunshine with a breeze out of the north, though. Light cold, highs up around 40 with more mainly dry and cold weather expected through Friday. Celebrate the new year with Dixieland Fireworks. Locally owned with the largest selection around. A Black Hat dealer with the lowest prices in Dixie. Dixieland Fireworks just off I-75 on Ringgold Road, East Ridge. And I'm Sworn Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM.
For years, you have heard these words: cash, 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 and more cash. Now, Rick wants you to buy on U.S. Gold American coins. Are you tired of making 1% on your investments with the banks, even 2 or 3% at best? Well, don't miss out. Stop by Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds at 5301 Brainerd Road in Chattanooga. Buy American. Buy now. Gold is on the rise. Certified U.S. Gold American Eagle coins at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road in Chattanooga.
Oh, man, rush. I've got to get stuff for the party. Where can I go that's going to give me a wide selection of beer, wines, and spirits? Oh, I got it. I'll go to Harry's Wine and Spirits, Signal Mountain. Maybe East Brainerd Wine and Spirits in East Brainerd. I could go to Riley's Wines and Spirits in Hickson. Wow, look at the huge selection in here. Look at these great prices. Amazing. Oh, yeah, I'm going to find something for my lady, too. I'm going to make this party a success.
Make your party a success when you stop in at Harry's Wine and Spirits in Signal Mountain, East Brainerd Wine and Spirits in East Brainerd, and Riley's Wine and Spirits in Hickson.
Mom's stew pot, her exercise bike, her bookcase of cheap novels, Mom's estate. Oh, just call Dan. He'll sort, organize, clear out, tag, sell, and in a few days, hand you a nice check. 314-4034. 314-4034.
In this moment, who has your back? Do you know the name of your insurance agent? Does your agent know your name? Or would you call a 1-800 number that connects you with whom? Another state? Another country? Get a local independent insurance agent with Auto Owners Insurance. Someone you can call when bad stuff happens. In this moment, get an agent who will protect you in that moment. Let Goss Insurance in Chattanooga help you today. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no-problem people. GossInsurance.com. Goss. GossInsurance.com. Representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no-problem people. 875-2500. 875-2500. Want a business phone system that gives you Outlook integration, Salesforce integration, smartphone integration? Why desk sets and expensive lines? Turn smartphones into a cohesive business system. Call Signal 619-1200. Signal Voice and Data 619-1200.
Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree? Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News Talk Nooga Radio.
Sharp, opinionated, thought-provoking. Clutch with Keon Rose.
You're listening to all new Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. Make sure to check us out, by the way, on YouTube, where we stream all of our shows and programming live. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. And before I get to my Baseball Hall of Fame thing, because I just find that to be bizarre, the way we talk about the steroid era in baseball, the way we talk about morality and the Hall of Fame, that whole situation weirds me out. And I'll talk to you about that in a second, but I actually want to talk about the NFL, specifically the pizza sponsorship with Papa John's, with Papa John's being the official pizza sponsor of the NFL. Pretty much done. After the CEO, John Schnatter, had to step down earlier last year, in large part because he said that the reason why Papa John's was losing its sales was because players were kneeling in the NFL and alluded to that being the association with it, which, look, I understand if you no longer want to be in sponsorship with the NFL because you actually are offended by what it is that players are doing. I have given you, at this point, a litany of reasons why it is that I think that you should not be offended by what the players are doing. But if you still are offended, that is fine. And you're allowed to make the decisions that you have to make for your business that you think works best for you morally. And I think that work best for you even financially, if you think that you really are losing money. But you don't criticize your sponsorship partner. That's just bad business. Yeah. John Schnatter was forced out of his CEO spot. And then Papa John's not maintaining that particular sponsorship deal, Pizza Hut filling the void. Now, I think that both of those pizzas are as bad and disgusting as one another. I've never been a big Papa John's guy. I always thought their pizza was either too dry or too oily, never in the middle. And that's a bad way for pizza to be. Just my opinion on that one. Not now that I feel like I've probably killed off any future sponsorship with us and Papa John's, but whatever. My thing is this. This is a business. And if the NFL is toxic, because this is the thing that I hear on Hannity's show, and anytime we run any Gallagher, is that the NFL is just toxic now, and advertisers don't want to be with the NFL. And look at all the advertisers running away. Like, well, no, look, they filled their pizza void awfully quickly for a company that's so toxic, right? Like they filled their void with yet another company that can afford to pony up the cash for the sponsorship. But there's a reason why you would want to be a sponsor with the NFL. You can talk about the NFL's declining ratings. The NFL has declining ratings, not just because players knelt, but because the NFL is on TV, and traditional TV is losing its viewership. It just is. Like, that's just a fact. People are cutting the cord. People are finding other ways to consume television. And so they're not just not watching the NFL for that one reason. There's, as always in life, multiple reasons why something happened. It's complicated, right? And so you look at the NFL and you go, 37 of the top 50 rated shows on TV were the NFL. We're the NFL. 37 of the top 50 rated shows over the last year. And this has more or less been the case. Most of the highest rated episodes of anything are NFL football games. It's got a gigantic draw. And you know why? Like it's because it's an exciting game. We're talking about a sport where we are concerned about the health and safety of the players. We are concerned about whether or not this is actually good for the people playing the game. And despite that, people still watch football. So what made you think that some political activism was going to stop it? Seriously. Just I don't understand that. Like this is not, the NFL is losing money, but I think the NFL is losing money for a number of reasons, probably more so because the NFL is Walmart in a world where the NBA and the NHL and NASCAR have found a way to be Amazon. They've been able to get to their viewers and their listeners in a multitude of different ways, in a way that the NFL has not been able to, because the NFL still uses the old traditional TV model. And they're only just now figuring out how to find ways to get online and get fans engaged in watching the game that way, right? Like that's one huge thing. But the toxicity of the NFL, I believe, has been greatly overstated because Papa John's backed out as the sponsor and Pizza Hut was in the same day. The same day. And by the way, Papa John's is not completely cutting off its association with the NFL. They are still going to be running ads with specific individual players. So if you were a fan of the Papa John's Peyton Manning ads, those will probably still exist because Peyton Manning is no longer officially affiliated with the NFL. Right? And there'll be individual players who will have deals with Papa John's. I imagine J.J. Watt's going to probably still have his deal with Papa John's. And there'll be other players there too, I bet. But they're not cut off from the NFL. They're just no longer the official sponsor of the league. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio, noogaradio.com, 92.7 FM. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and YouTube if you have not done so already. That's Nooga Radio. Search it in either search bar and you'll find us. So I want to talk about the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame because I think baseball is one of the most interesting sports in terms of how much morality plays into the game in a way that it doesn't necessarily play in the other sports, right? Like, again, we do have people outraged at the player protests and everything else in the NFL, but this is still different, right? Like, there's still not something in the NFL that you can do that is fundamentally morally wrong as it offends the game of football itself. You can do plenty of things in baseball that people would consider offensive to the game of baseball itself. And for those reasons, you wind up not being in the Hall of Fame. That's a crazy idea, but also a hypocritical idea because the Major League Baseball is the out of sight, out of mind sport. Like, we have actually convinced ourselves of a couple of very wonky things when it comes to baseball. We have convinced ourselves that the Hall of Fame is a place of integrity, which is weird when you consider that Tom Yaki, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and Bud Selig are all in the Hall of Fame, right? Tom Yaki and Kennesaw Mountain Landis kept baseball segregated for years. 4 years. Did not want black players in the league at all. And they are honored in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not, by the way, saying that this is a reason why they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, right? Because I think that you should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame for your baseball contributions. And they did make a number of also positive baseball contributions. And I don't want to one-dimensionalize somebody. I remember last year was a big deal. The Red Sox changed the road that led to their stadium because it was Yaki Way was the name of the road, or Yaki Lane, I think. And Tom Yaki, as I mentioned, didn't want the league to have black players in the league. But the reason why you would have that there is that Tom Yaki, again, multidimensional person. He was also a very charitable person. And the Yaki family still runs a lot of the charitable organizations that Tom Yaki started in his lifetime. And so, yeah, they don't want to be associated with racism, but his name does have something of that connotation to it. But I still think you leave Tom Yaki in the Hall of Fame. This is not an argument to not have him in the Hall of Fame. I just think it's weird that the morality on that, when we talk about the Hall of Fame being this place of integrity, the morality on that seems to be pretty shifty. And Bud Selig being in the Hall of Fame is highly laughable to me for a number of reasons. One reason is that Bud Selig, as an owner, actively colluded against the players in negotiations of the CBA, which to me is insane that as an owner, you actively colluded against the people who constitute your league, and you still get to be in the Hall of Fame. And then there's the other part of it, which is the entire steroid era, for which a number of baseball players will never be in the Hall of Fame. I'm very worried about Mark McGwire, and I'm very worried about Barry Bonds because I think that they should be in the Hall. They're never going to be in the Hall of Fame, but Bud Selig, the commissioner of the league, under whom the steroid era actually happened under his watch, he gets to be in the Hall. And that's so bizarre. That's so bizarre to me. But I think it's actually connected to the other issue, the other thing that we forget about the game of baseball, or that we make very convenient stories for, which is we act like the steroid era in baseball is over. I am not sure about that, right? I'm not really sure that the steroid era in baseball is over, but I think we don't want to talk about it anymore. We never wanted to talk about the steroid era in the first place. But once it became a big deal, everyone had an opinion. If you're cheating, you had an advantage that other guys didn't have. Never mind that we have guys in the Hall of Fame that maybe we didn't catch cheating. Did you ever think of that? Like, there are some players that are athletically gifted and naturally talented. And obviously, that's going to get you in the Hall of Fame. But there are players who took performance-enhancing drugs in a lot of instances before they were strictly banned substances, never get in the Hall of Fame. Right? And it's crazy. Right? I mean, to me, it's one of the more bizarre things. The commissioner under which the steroid era happened, he gets to be in the Hall of Fame, but the players don't get to be in. If we can figure it out. And it's like we don't even really know when the steroid era started, and we really don't know when it ended, because you can talk about for many decades before it was finally banned in the 90s, amphetamines were used, greenies were used to help players focus on hitting the ball. And what is like the number one criticism of the guys who currently play the game today? Well, they don't know how to strategically hit a baseball, right? Like, they don't know how to go through the pitch count and everything, which I don't think is necessarily true. But you have to imagine that players who were taking amphetamines before they were banned, that offered an advantage that later players would not have. And again, I'm not suggesting that those people be taken out of the Hall of Fame. I'm suggesting that the players who were involved in the steroid era be allowed into the Hall of Fame, if not for the sole reason of the players before them had an advantage and the players after them are still using steroids. Okay? You have to be absolutely naive if you think that guys aren't using now. They've gotten better at it. They're not getting caught. And maybe one day we'll make a test that catches up to all of these guys, but like, they're not getting caught. Guys entering the league are still bigger, stronger, and faster than people who weren't. And I don't want this to turn into a wild game of speculation as to who it is that is and is not using, right? Because there's some guys who are just talented like that. Some people really just are that freaky athletic. I mean, it gets to be really tough, right? Like, if Bo Jackson had played baseball in his short stint that he did play baseball, if he had done it in the steroid era, we would almost be certain that Bo Jackson was on steroids, because like, how could you do any of the things that Bo Jackson did? Like, Bo Jackson was just that naturally gifted. I don't want to try and have to figure out who is that naturally gifted and who it is that is out here cheating. But the guys that used were in an entire league that was using, and they were using in large part due to the negligence of the commissioner of that league, who at the time was benefiting from it. Like, everybody was benefiting from the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire home run race. Everybody was benefiting from the latter half of Barry Bonds' career. Because Barry Bonds, by the way, before the point in his career where you could visually look at him and say, that guy's probably using steroids, before that point, Barry Bonds was a great baseball player. Like you could put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame based on his numbers alone before that point. Like, we're talking about the latter portion of Barry Bonds' career here, that he was actually on steroids, I imagine, to fight off decline, essentially. As you get older, it gets harder to hit a baseball. But when you talk about Barry Bonds being one of the guys that is absolutely capable of offensive destruction, I mean, Barry Bonds was capable of all of these things prior to where we would figure he was using steroids. Right? Barry Bonds may still wind up never being in the Hall of Fame, which is just, again, I cannot even fathom that. He is one of the great baseball players. And it's not, like, I don't know. If you're going to have him in and have an asterisk, then I have to ask, when we have guys like Tom Yaki and Kennesaw Mountain Landis in the Hall of Fame, and they wanted the league to be segregated. They wanted the league to be, they didn't want black players in the league, right? They didn't want black players in the league. Are we going to put an asterisk next to their name for contributions to baseball? Because if you don't have black players in the league, we miss out on Hank Aaron. Right? We miss out on Ken Griffey Jr. and a number of great players. Like, we actually miss out on having these guys in the league. Like, what kind of contribution to baseball is that? Are you going to put an asterisk next to those names? I think you just either let people into the Hall of Fame or you don't. And I think there are guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame that use steroids that are simply going to be in the Hall of Fame because they apologized. Right? Like Andy Pettitte. I like Andy Pettitte a lot. But he did get caught using steroids. And Andy Pettitte apologized. He's going to get in. I think that there are players that are being punished in large part due to their defiance. Right? And I do think that the Hall of Fame, the writers of the Hall of Fame, try and do this morality thing all the time. And I think that they should not engage in this in large part because the morality is dubious. The line shifts all the time. There are racists in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, granted, they are a product of their time and their environment. I'm not holding that against them, but they are in the Hall of Fame. So how come we have a problem with a guy like Curt Schilling? Right? And I'm not a defender of anything that Curt Schilling has said. Curt Schilling has said a number of things that I think border on racist. I think he's been homophobic. I think he's been transphobic. I am in no defense of any of the things that Curt Schilling has said on social media, right? None of the things that he has said that has gotten him fired from ESPN. Like, I'm not in defense of any of those things. But at what point do we not decide that the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is a place for baseball contributions, and we leave the morality stuff to public relations and to the general public? We leave the morality stuff to the legal system and let guys into the Hall of Fame that were good at baseball. Because that's really what it ought to be about. Yeah, I don't know that you get to be in the Hall of Fame and you were blatantly cheating, but when the entire league was benefiting from it, when the entire league was cheating, when you couldn't tell the guy that was cheating apart from the guy that maybe wasn't because you couldn't possibly know, that to me is very problematic. And that you have guys that are not going to be in the Hall of Fame because they did use steroids, but they were mostly defiant. Like, the crime that they have, the crime for which they are most being punished, is their defiance. That's absolutely crazy to me. Like, I've never understood that. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on all new Nooga Radio at NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. It's just absolutely bizarre. It's to me, it's double speak. You are speaking out of both sides of your mouth. Right? Like if you thought that the steroid era was so bad that guys can't be in the Hall of Fame, there were baseball writers that did not have a problem with it when baseball writers were in high demand in the 90s. And baseball writers didn't have a problem with it, especially the newer baseball writers who were bloggers, when there was a demand for baseball blogs. Like you didn't have a problem reaping the benefits of this era. But you're going to keep guys out of the Hall of Fame for participating in it. And at the same time, I should point out that Bud Selig was a part of the era. And also, it's not over. Guys are still using steroids. It's like, what are we going to do about that? Right? Like, what are we going to do when it's time for Aaron Judge to be a Hall of Famer? I'm not saying he's using. I don't think he is. I couldn't tell you either way. But he's a guy that you can't tell from. He's either very gifted or using, and you can't tell the two apart. So you're going to let some guys in after the fact? Clutch with Keon Rose on all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. Remember, stay clutch.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Terror in Dalton. Police have confirmed the identity of a teacher who's accused of firing one round of ammunition through the window of a classroom after barricading himself inside. Mr. Jesse Randall Davidson taken into custody. He had been a social studies teacher at the school since 2004. No students were hurt. Everyone was evacuated quickly and taken to the Northwest Georgia Convention Center. Mr. Davidson was quickly apprehended. Jonathan E. Walker took the stand at his trial, and he said he was not going 50 miles per hour. He was not on his cell phone in the deadly Woodmore bus crash case, which happened on Talley Road, killing 6 children. Mr. Walker says he was driving 35 miles an hour down Talley Road when another vehicle got into his lane and caused him to swerve, and that's when he crashed. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 News. Now.
95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM.
Expect fair to partly cloudy skies to continue through your nighttime. Cold overnight, lows mid and upper 20s. Now for your Wednesday, look for some sunshine with a breeze out of the north, though. Light cold highs up around 40 with more mainly dry and cold weather expected through Friday. Celebrate the new year with Dixieland Fireworks, locally owned with the largest selection around. A Black Hat dealer with the lowest price.